Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Auburn Energy Committee meeting on Monday, April 25th. It is now called to order at approximately 5:33 p.m. This meeting is being recorded and broadcasted by Local Access Programming. As there is no one in the audience tonight, there is no recordings. So there being none, we will go to our first agenda item. We would like to talk about the LED project, and we are going to get George Woodbury from LightSmart, who represented the town of Sutton in their LED project, to give us some information. So Eric, you're going to try to see if we can get George on the phone?
Sure.
George speaking.
Hi, George. This is Eric and the Energy Committee from Auburn. Got you on the phone here.
Great.
How are ya?
Terrific.
Great. George, we're just letting you know that our meeting tonight is it is being recorded for rebroadcasting on our local access television, and I just wanted to give you that information.
That's fine by me.
Okay, wonderful. So we met with Doreen DeFazio last month, the energy manager from the town of Sutton, and she informed us that the town had worked with you on their LED light conversion, and she recommended your services, and we were just, as a committee, looking to hear from you, maybe a bit of your history, your experience, and what you can offer the town of Auburn.
Well, let's go back to 1995 when I retired after 26 years in the Army, and my last job had been the Director of Public Works at Fort Knox, where I had 843 employees and 18 million square feet of facilities, 46 megawatt load. I ran my own municipal power company there, and I just had so much fun. I thought that's what I wanted to do, so I applied for and got the job as the DPW Director in Lexington, Mass. And it was while I was in that position that I wrote the statute that allows cities and towns to take over their street lights. In Lexington's case, we had 3,343 street lights and an annual street light bill of $521,000 a year. Today is $105,000 a year. So it was, on my part as the DPW director, I was looking for ways, one, to gain control over the type of lights that the town had, so we had the lighting options committee would be satisfied, but more importantly as a way to help save money. Since 2000, I've been a consultant working in Massachusetts and other parts of the country, helping cities and towns through the process of acquiring their streetlights and with crafting legislation in other states. Since passed legislation in Maine and Rhode Island and New York, also working with groups in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Maryland, California. I've helped over 100 communities acquire their street lighting assets, and I've done about 100,000 streetlight conversions, mostly in Massachusetts, but I've done projects in 13 states so far. Quite familiar with National Grid and their policies, working with John Walters, and have been negotiating with them around tariff structures in Rhode Island that eventually will spill over into Massachusetts. Most recently, I've finished projects, we're wrapping up Sutton right now, finished projects in Pittsburgh, Randolph, Westwood, Sutton. Canton is pending. Their town meeting will vote in May, working with Carlisle, working with Newburyport, and then 27 communities in Rhode Island, including the city of Providence. Typically what I do for a city or town is I just become an extension of your staff and help you first understand the various options that are available to you in terms of owning and converting your streetlights to more energy efficient sources. Help you get the information you need to make an informed decision so you can decide how you want to design the project and how you want it completed. And then I help you through the process of securing the contractors, securing the materials, getting the project done, getting all the grants for you, handling any other paperwork that might be required. So it's kind of a one-stop shop where you have somebody working for you who's there to help save you as much money as possible and help you achieve the goals that you have in mind. So that's kind of, a short summary of my history. I've done, as I said, about 100 communities in Massachusetts. I've done the traffic signals for 37 cities and towns in Massachusetts, including the Department of Conservation and Recreation. I'm also a licensed energy broker in the state, so I've done energy contracts for 27 cities and towns, and I'm a voting member of the American National Standards Institute on outdoor lighting.
Thank you.
So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. It's a rather sizable nutshell.
It's fun, I really enjoy this because the savings are very predictable, and it's one of the few projects that you can do where you're saving substantial amounts of money and energy that's highly visible to the public. When you change out a boiler in a school, who notices?
Right.
When you change out streetlights, everybody notices, and it's a real positive message to the public that you're trying to make things better and save money for them.
That's a great point.
George, this is Maureen Daly. I was curious if you could speak to, we've had some representation from the town come in and share some of their thoughts on the LED lights that we pick, and I believe it was on the temperature, the warm temperature of the lights, and provided some materials to us. I was curious if you could comment on your experiences with decisions that different towns make, some items that Auburn should be mindful of before we go down this road.
Well, first, let's back up, and I need you to understand that this is not a simple process of I've got a 100-watt bulb and I want to replace it with a 100-watt equivalent LED. It really is about a series of trade-offs, and these trade-offs center around dollar savings, life cycle costs, public satisfaction, environmental goals, so on and so forth. So let me give you an example. You can put up a low-cost 50-watt replacement. You have a 50-watt high-pressure sodium lamp. You can put up a low-cost LED that is a full cutoff, so it meets night sky criteria. And you can select, and that's it. It's essentially the same amount of light on the roadway as what you had when you had the high-pressure sodium lamp. That fixture will turn off at dusk and turn on at dusk and turn off at dawn. So, that's your lowest cost approach. Alternative, you could put up a light that is control ready. That is, now that you go to an LED has the ability to be instant on and instant off. And so what's happened is people have started putting controls on these that they can communicate with, and they can dim the light after certain hours to both extend its life expectancy and reduce its energy consumption. Now, these control devices include a meter chip, so they would actually measure the actual amount of energy that light consumes and report it back via a website to you and to the utility. Granted, the utilities today do not have tariffs that would recognize that meter chip, but it's only a matter of a few years before they will. There's an ongoing pilot program in Rhode Island by National Grid, in which the PSC down there is forcing National Grid to review the use of this data and to figure out a way to integrate it into their billing. Obviously, once that's done, we would push them to do the same thing in Massachusetts. Now, you've got a number of communities, Cambridge, Fitchburg, Randolph, Westwood that are installing streetlights with these control systems, because they look at not just the ability of the light to report itself as out or not working properly, to be able to be dimmed and save energy, but also because this network that the lights communicate over is a platform that can support other uses that the town has. In Westwood's case, we're looking to read our water meters with it, to save them having to go out to people's basements and read their water meters. The water meter would simply talk to the nearest street light, and that information will be transported back. It's a little bit like cell phones. When we first got them, you flipped them open and you could make a call. Today, you can get directions on them or go to the internet or get your email. So, I don't know where these networks are going to go in the future, but my recommendation to most communities is they want to go to a network solution. Now, another area is the one that you mentioned, the color temperature of an LED. Understand that there's no such thing as a white LED. The way we produce white light with an LED is you have a long wavelength blue or ultraviolet LED light source, and then you encapsulate into the photometrics of that long wavelength blue LED phosphorus. So it works just the same way a fluorescent light fixture does. The UV light causes the phosphorus to glow, and the phosphorus, depending on the mix of colors, produces the color that's emitted by the light. Now, clearly, that LED wants to be blue because that's the base color. So they originally came out, these were running around 5,700 Kelvin, which is a very blue-white, kind of like a BMW headlight color. Like you see in a diamond store, or you might see at an auto store where they've got the metal halides that produce the same very white light. Most folks aren't real happy with that color and prefer the warmer color temperatures. So the industry has gone to 4,300 Kelvin, or 4,000 Kelvin is the most common fixture that's out there. And what happens is when you go to the warmer color temperatures, you have to add more phosphorus into the chip. And the addition of phosphorus does two things. It makes the light less energy efficient, and two, it decreases its expected life. So you could, and you can today, buy a 3,000 Kelvin LED fixture, but at the expense, for the most part, of going from 100,000 hour life expectancy to about 50,000 hours. And your efficacies will drop from 105, 102 lumens per watt down into the 80 lumens per watt range. Now, there is one exception. Cree has just recently released a fixture, their RSW series, where they're mixing the red, green, blue color to create the white look, and they're doing it through prisms and photometrics. The beauty of this particular light is it doesn't have any of the loss of energy efficiency, and it doesn't have the life expectancy loss, but it's only available in a 30 and 50 watt version, so it's good for up to a 100 watt HPS fixture in terms of being available to replace those fixtures. It also has a significantly reduced glare factor, which is another complaint around LEDs. So that's kind of the deal with warmer color temperatures. You can get it. All manufacturers generally are offering it, albeit typically at a slightly higher price. But you do sacrifice something when you select that. I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you. If I can just circle back for one moment about the metered chip discussion, I'm assuming that means that's probably a more expensive option for the town versus having so if they're programmable or non-programmable, I'm assuming that metered chip has an additional cost associated with it.
Yeah, let me discuss that briefly. To buy a light that's control ready, that is, it has the new ANSI standard 7-pin photocell receptacle. You can get either the 5 with a 7-pin. The old photo cells were 3-pin. So the most common you see out there is the 5-pin, but I recommend the 7-pin with pins 6 and 7 active, and I can get into the details of why, but nevertheless, that's what I would recommend. And you get the dimmable driver in the fixture, and you don't necessarily add the controls today. That's only going to cost you a few bucks more, but it gives you a fixture that's ready for controls at any time in the future. You could add them if you desire. When you go to a controlled light, you double its cost. So the fixture might cost you $140, and the control device is going to cost you $140. So it is a big expense, and it really depends on what your goals are. The thing you have to keep in mind is that the human eye will not detect a 30% variance in light output. So I could have you in a room, and while we were talking, I could be slowly dimming the lights by up to 30%, and nobody would even notice that it had been done. As an example, in the town of Randolph, all of the streetlight fixtures we put up, when we added the control device, those control devices were preset to operate the lights at 50% power. So when the lights went from 100% to 50%, nobody noticed. We got no phone calls. It was rather remarkable because we expected a few, but we didn't get any. Most folks won't notice the change, which is why dimming after certain hours at night is kind of a neat idea. Now, you can buy a photo cell that will automatically dim. It's preset, so, and it's a smart photo cell. It says, look, I turned on tonight at such and such a time, and so I need to turn off at such and such a time. And then every day it adjusts based on what it did yesterday, so it can account for the shift in dusk to dawn. That way the light generally goes off at the same time every night and comes back on in the wee hours of the morning at the same time to accommodate early morning rush hour traffic. So those are a couple of the options around the control devices, but as I said, they do double the price of the project.
And you did mention that if National Grid isn't recognizing the metered lighting, does purchasing those just extend the return on investment for them? Because we could be dimming our lights and reducing our energy consumption. How does that relate to what we would end up paying National Grid?
Well, here's one other thing you have to keep in mind when you design your system. In Massachusetts, National Grid is billing for LEDs using a tiered structure. So any light that is between 0 and 50 watts will be billed as if it's 25 watts regardless of what energy it's consuming. If it's between 50 and 100, 51 and 100, it will be billed at 75 watts and so forth. Now in Rhode Island, we fought against that approach, and we did push them to where they go in Rhode Island from 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60 to 100, 100 to 140, so we did it that way. That's somewhat better, but I anticipate over time that tiered structure is going to change, and they're going to shift to a more actual. In terms of your grants, your grant is going to be based on the actual wattage the fixture is operating at. So when we do a design, we have to look at both factors. What's your grant going to be? And secondly, what are you going to be billed at? It makes it a little complex. Now, I've done some preliminary numbers for Auburn. Eric sent me your bill copies, and of the bill copies he sent, there were 5 that had outdoor lighting on them. Most of your street lights are on 2 bills. The rest were just small numbers. So right now, it looks to me, based on the bills I was provided and today's tariff rates, that you're spending about $155,500 a year for your street lighting. If you just own the lights, that is, you take them over as is and you maintain them as is, you would save about $50,000 a year. We don't know what your purchase price is until we get that information from National Grid. So that would require you all to send them a letter and request the purchase price information. That's going to take them several months to get that back to you. If you were to convert them to LEDs, that's $50,000 in savings, and this is just a control-ready system. This doesn't include the controls. But your annual savings would be $114,000. So it goes up pretty dramatically. Now, let's say you were to convert your system to LEDs, not including an incentive. Your estimated costs are around $370,000. If you were to put in control system, that is with the controls, it would be more like $525,000. So your return on investment for an LED conversion is about 5 years, and your return on investment for a system with controls is about 7.8 years. Now, here's the thing. The issue of a control, let's say you had a control device, you said, well, how much is it going to save me? What's my return on investment for dimming the lights after certain hours of the night? So assuming you dim the light from 11 until 5 a.m., 11 p.m. until 5 a.m., that's 2,190 hours a year, or about 42% of the time. Actually, it's more than 42%. Just a minute. They operate 4175. 2190 divided by 4175 is 52% of the time. I'm sorry. So 52% of the time they'd be dimmed, but you dim them by 50%. So you get, basically you're getting about a 28% savings. But the savings are based on the energy that the LEDs consume, not based on the current lighting. So the problem with it is let's take the bulk of your street lights are the 4,000 lumen high pressure sodium, which is a 50-watt fixture that uses 250 kilowatt hours a year. You're going to replace that with a light that uses 25 watts or about 102 kilowatt hours a year. Now let's say we save, we multiply that times 28%, we're saving 28 kilowatt hours a year, and if it's at 15 cents a kilowatt hour, we're only saving $5 a year. And that control cost me $140. So the return on that investment is very long.
I see.
So when one makes that decision, it's not based on energy savings, it's based upon the other benefits that you anticipate you're going to get from the control system in the future. Now, let's talk from the old, let me put on my old DPW hat. Here's how municipalities work, and you all know this already. If I generate $100,000 in savings this year, where is that money next year? It's gone. It's been absorbed in the budget to solve some other problem, or to reduce the tax, the amount the tax rate has to go up. But it's gone. So any savings this year are not savings next year. They're simply cost avoidance. So the problem with putting up controls, if you think it's something you're going to want to do, is you have to start from scratch. You got to go back to the voters and say, I need to borrow this amount of money in order to add these controls for these reasons, and the amount of grant money you're going to get from the utility is going to be relatively small in comparison to the cost of the control. The advantage of waiting, of course, is these control devices are going to get cheaper. I don't know how much cheaper, but it wouldn't surprise me to see them get under $100 versus where they're at now. So there would be some advantage from that perspective.
George, I've got a question on the existing poles and lights. When we switch them, is there, are we paying for the bulb and then also the fixture at the top of the pole? Is that what gets changed?
I'm not sure I follow your question, but when you purchase your street lights, mostly what you're purchasing is a mast arm, that metal bracket that sticks out 6 feet from the wooden pole, and the fixture on the end of that bracket.
Okay.
NGRID is requiring you install a fuse between the wiring that feeds that fixture and the secondary connection at the pole. We've been successful in convincing them that your contractor can do that without NGRID having to become involved, as long as they meet the OSHA 1910.269 qualification standards. So when you own the fixture, you own that mast arm and you own the fixture on the end of it. When you convert it to an LED, you simply take the fixture off the end of the mast arm and insert the new LED onto the end of the mast arm and connect it to the wiring.
Okay.
And ordinarily, most towns, they'll go ahead and do the fusing at the same time. So the way the language in the agreement was written was that anytime you service a light, you have to fuse the light, but you don't have to fuse it until you service it. But you do have to complete the fusing within 10 years. And the reason it was designed that way was because even your existing system, the mean time to failure on those high-pressure sodium lamps is about 6 years. So we figured by 10 years, every light would have been serviced at least once. And so there would be no special trips required just to put a fuse on.
That's understandable.
Now, the cost of those fuses are about $25 plus the associated labor. It only takes a few minutes per light. So all of that's computed in these costs that I just kind of summarized for you. Those are back-of-the-envelope numbers, obviously, that would be refined once we sat down together and determined the specific design that you wanted. And then I could determine what the cost of the equipment would be. But so this is just a preliminary estimate to give you an idea of the numbers.
Okay. Thank you for that.
George, one thing we've talked about here is, once we move forward with it, what type of community outreach have you seen from other projects you've worked on? Do you see towns setting up one street with the lights, or just from experience, how have you seen that aspect of these projects roll out?
It's been different. Each community is somewhat different. The good news is that people in Auburn can today drive a very short distance and see what LED lights look like and get a flavor of what they want. Now, for example, in Arlington, when I did that project, we went out and we put up 3 fixtures from 5 different manufacturers and, put up 3 in a row on different streets that were very similar. And we had people go out and look at them and tell us what they thought. When you start getting into that, it's expensive because you have to hire a contractor. You've got to buy fixtures at each's prices, and it's time consuming because you have to get them up, then you have to organize people to go out and look, then you have to gather your data. But I've done all of that sort of thing. Now the other option you have, if you want, is you could take a look at a couple different fixtures. For example, you asked the question about the color temperature. The other thing, by the way, to keep in mind about color temperature is the human eye perceives that blue-white light, that 5700 Kelvin fixture, as much brighter than the same amount of lumens when it's in a warm color temperature. Just that's the way the eye works. So one of the things I discovered when I did Fairhaven, we used 5,000 Kelvin temperature lamps, but we reduced the lumens of the fixture to help make people happier with it, and also to reduce glare, and that worked pretty well. So an option that you might have is you might want to take a look at this new RSW fixture and compare it side by side with, say, a standard 4,000 Kelvin fixture and see what you think. The beauty of taking that approach is it's really it's choice A or choice B, and it doesn't get too complicated. But, you know, it's up to you all how you want to do this. Each community is a little bit different. It's up to you. Because, you know, if you think about it, your savings, you're losing, every month you delay this, you're losing $10,000.
We're all shaking our heads.
We're all nodding in agreement with you.
Any more questions for George? George, we thank you for taking the time to speak with us as a committee. We appreciate, you know, the information that you've been able to provide us, and also your back of the envelope numbers are quite compelling.
And George, if you're comfortable with those, would you mind sending those directly to Eric, just so that I can just reconcile them in the meeting minutes, just so that if anybody from the town wanted to see, and they will be stated as just a rough estimate, but just to give the folks in town some perspective on what the potential is.
Yep. Now, the other thing I've done, and I think I promised this to you before, Eric, and I forgot to send it, I've gone ahead while I was waiting for this meeting, and I've set up the letters that you need to send the National Grid into the DTE to tell them of the town's intent to move forward with the streetlight acquisition.
Okay.
And that will get you into the queue. I will tell you, sometimes that queue with N-Grid can be 4, 5, 6 months. So one of the things I talked to a number of communities about it. I don't know if I talked to you about. You have an option of sending them a letter saying, gee, we're thinking about this. How much are the lights going to cost?
Mm-hmm.
And you sit back and you wait a few months, and then finally you'll get a number from them. Then you'll turn around and you say, oh, this really looks good. We'd like to go forward. You send them a letter saying we want to go forward, and then you wait 3 or 4 or 5 more months while you wait to get that. The option is to do what I'm doing here, where you say we're going to go forward with the acquisition of the lights, presuming that the purchase price is reasonable, and you give everybody formal notice. That starts the clock ticking, and in theory, they're supposed to produce the documents within 60 days. You get the documents at the end of 60 days. During the meantime, you can be doing some other things to get ready to move forward, but if the numbers come in bad, you could go back and say, geez, these are not what we expected. We're going to have to think about this, and you're not going to be forced to do anything. So it really is a better approach, because it starts that clock. It gets you to where you want to go quicker, and if everything turns out as I would anticipate, you're going to move forward. So this will get you down that path sooner.
Wow. You'll send that to my email. Is that that's what you said?
I'm going to send that along with these cost figures, cost and savings estimates. I'll send it all together tonight.
Sure. Thank you.
Anyway, I'd love to work with you guys. You know, my job, as I said, is I work for you. And I don't make any more money or less money one way or the other. My job is to help you make a good, well-informed decision so that you're happy with the end result when you get done.
Great.
Well, thank you, George. Thank you very much for taking some time to talk to us today, and we're looking forward to the additional information.
Mm-hmm.
You're quite welcome.
All right. Have a good night, George. Take care.
Thanks, Eric.
Bye.
So, Eric, from a procedural perspective, what are the next steps for the LED light project? Is this one of those items where we would make a recommendation to the town manager, or is it something that's already in the works?
I think we would want to make a recommendation, and ultimately what's gonna be, what we'll be required to do is once we have those numbers from National Grid, and, you know, they would go before administration and the Board of Selectmen, I'm sure. Once that is approved, the idea of the acquisition, then it has to go to the town, to a town meeting vote. So that, the acquisition and the conversion costs, that would all have to go to town meeting. So next step, yeah, I believe a recommendation, if the committee would like to recommend that we work with George, a letter formalizing that recommendation would be great. And I would address it to Julie and to the Board of Selectmen. And then from there, we will await a response.
Great.
Mhm.
So would anybody like to entertain a motion that we make a recommendation?
I will.
Would like to second the motion? Alright. Any discussion? I think we all seem to be pretty much in support of the project, and you know, my opinion, George seems to be very knowledgeable, very thoughtful about, you know, what would be best for the town. So, you know, in my opinion, I think he would be a really good fit, so.
Mhm.
So all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed? Motion granted. I will take that, Eric, to draft the letter and then share it with the committee, and we'll send that to the town manager.
Awesome. I'm sure you will, but I'd, you know, suggest using some of these back of the envelope numbers and,
Yes.
and maybe speaking about some of the communities that he has worked with, or, you know, those types of things I think would be great.
Definitely.
Mhm.
And that's why so I took some of the numbers down, however he was
Yeah.
going through them. I can always listen to the recording, but if he sends something over, I think that would be helpful, so
Yeah.
that so that we're reporting accurately
Mhm.
what his statements are.
I'll be certain to share that with you when I receive them.
Excellent. All right, so perhaps we can move on to our next agenda item, which is the solar project over the landfill. And Eric, do you want to get everyone updated on kind of what's transpired since the last meeting?
Sure. Matt Benoit, the town planner, and I, we were contacted by a developer who does this type of work in the state, for another reason. And I asked them about landfill, you know, do you know any consultants that could help us on this project? And they responded saying, if you're looking to simply lease the land for somebody else to develop it, and you're not looking to offtake the energy, to use the energy, you're not looking to manage a project, you may not have to actually RFP. That could really delay, you know, the project and could increase your costs, especially to pay a consultant. You know, if we went with a consultant that had a fee. The suggestion was to have several developers who have done projects on landfills come to the town, present their offerings and their work and their reputation, and then from there the town could, you know, choose a developer that they feel is best fit for the work at the landfill, and then work out a contract that way. And so after some discussion, we felt like that was a good suggestion, and it doesn't hurt to try, right?
Right.
If at the end of the process we don't feel comfortable, then we could approach a consultant if we feel like that would be better suited. But I think we could give that a try, given the nature of our effort.
And how much would that save by not hiring a consultant?
Well, it would depend on the consultant, the cost of the consultant, but I would imagine, you know,
I didn't know if we had numbers as how much that would cost.
We did have a percentage, I want to say from PMSCO, didn't we, as far as what percentage? I think we have
could you
that.
dig into
Yeah.
your brain and get that?
I can see it on, and I have it saved, I have it saved
Downloading.
somewhere, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, the challenge too is, it's somewhat of an unknown as well, because they're going to negotiate and get the
Best
deal
price.
for us, so it's,
Well, that's my
It's-
question. I didn't know if it was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If
Mhm.
it worked out, if we hired a consultant, since they may be able to negotiate a lower price, or if we have a set amount that we would be saving, you know, or
Right.
an average.
Yeah, that is a good point. And, you know, the information that I have was simply from a developer, so that's
Right.
a biased opinion for sure. The understanding that he passed on is that the lease prices for land are typically by acre and are pretty much fixed in the market. Your price per acre, and then the additional agreement that the town would enter into is a payment in lieu of taxes. And that those numbers also have like a general ballpark, and we could look at other towns' pilot agreements
Okay.
to understand, you know, what the payment basically per kilowatt hour, think that's created on site. I believe that is, you know, how they factor that. So it sounds like it's somewhat generic, on each front, but here's a good point.
and there's nothing that precludes us too from, after meeting with the solar developers, is re-engaging with any of the consultants to say, here's, you know, make your case, here's
Mhm.
what we feel that we can do, and what additional because it's not just the cost piece,
Mm.
so it's the cost and the
Right.
convenience and their expertise
And the
as to what they
expertise.
bring.
Right.
So there's nothing, I think in the interest of the town, it's worth just having the developers come in, if not for our own edification on their perspective as to how they approach it.
Mhm.
And at that point, we can make the determination, do we want to recommend that we go directly with a solar developer, recommend go with a consultant, or re-engage the consultants, come back in and say, and share with them, because it'll all be part of the, you know, public record, here's how the town of Auburn would approach it directly with a solar developer, what additionally do you bring to the table? And make our decision at that point.
Yeah.
For Erica and Cheryl, we went through a similar exercise when we were looking at municipal aggregators and came up with a list of kind of canned questions that we shared with all of them. So what it helped us do is, and then had them present to somewhat of a side-by-side comparison, which I think was very helpful for us through the vetting process. At least it gave us a comfort that we kind of got a lay of the land first. So I'm in support of it.
I would just be nervous because it's kind of unknown territory
Mm-hmm.
for the town.
Right.
You know, to have somebody that's done it and knows, and whereas if you go straight through a provider or developer, then we may be getting things that we don't necessarily, do you know what I mean? Need, or,
Oh, fair enough. And that's why I think having
you
multiples
know what I
come
mean?
in.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things as we were going down the road of the municipal aggregators. Each one's had very different relationships with how they managed it.
Mhm.
So there is that feeling of unknown
Yeah.
out there. So, and so
Right.
I think that's an excellent point to make. And I think it's worth it for us to meet with them and then see, you know, ultimately, you know, all roads lead to Julie on this, but I think she takes
Mhm.
the work we do into consideration, so.
Right, absolutely.
That,
Mm-hmm.
And would the consultant absorb some of the liability if there were any, or,
I didn't get the impression that they did, and at least from it looked like they pick it up, and once the job is implemented,
right? that's
they're
hands
out.
Okay,
So
Mhm.
any issues moving forward with the equipment, with the lease, with the vendor is back on us. And so that's why I challenged originally, what is it about that initial piece there? Because we own the relationship, we have to make sure that all of that is taken care of. So as long as the value that they bring in the implementation is commensurate with the cost,
Mhm.
perhaps it's worth it for us. So, but at the end of the day, we own it afterwards. So if
Right.
something happens after the day of implementation, now, I believe the gentleman who came said that they obviously, they're partners and they work with you.
Right.
But it definitely falls on the town at that point. So,
Mhm.
so that's why it feels like that level of it, a little more, I don't want to say control, but understanding of who the
Mhm.
developers are initially.
Yeah, and the developers would, they would be maintaining the equipment and the site. They would be, you know, obviously, whatever land we would lease to them, they would be responsible
Right.
for the term of that agreement, you know. But I do have a list of questions that, that Matt and I had put together. I'd like to share with the group for review. And then anything that we would want to add to this, that, you know, would be really helpful. And perhaps it could help inspire some conversation along these lines as well.
Eric, are your thoughts that we keep this discussion exclusive to the landfill? Or I know that at least when the gentleman from PMSCO came out, they talked about how, and that's one of the things that the consultant offers, is they do that analysis of what are all of your solar leasing
Right.
opportunities.
Mhm.
So when we're speaking with the solar developers, are we thinking of keeping it the scope of what we're charged with to the landfill, or do we want to broaden it, or at least ask those questions while we have them here?
I would be happy to, I think, to approach it either way. You know, I'll admit that my initial thought on the project was more narrow, you know, to the landfill. And PMSCO, when we spoke with them, offered that wider opportunity. And so I would defer to the committee and.
I mean, I would only recommend if we're having them come out here, at
Mhm.
least present the question to them as
Mhm.
far as what would, you know, how would you analyze the opportunity for the town? Maybe make sure they specifically address the landfill, but get their thoughts on if they see any others. Just, you know, while we have
Sure.
them here, now would be the time to ask the question, but I think we all know our scope is pretty exclusive to the landfill at this
Mhm.
point, but I don't think there's any harm in at least asking the questions.
No, not at all.
Now, the companies that we're asking these questions, have they actually seen the site? Have they been there physically?
No.
Okay.
No. And I'm not sure if they would make a site visit first. You
How
know,
can they give, an idea on how they would operate it if they haven't seen it?
right. Yeah, I guess that was, it's a good point. I was thinking just in general terms.
Yeah, could drive by, you know what I
Right.
mean, just to know the location and
Yeah.
anything that, how they would secure the actual area,
Mhm. Right.
Because I see, how a panel's secured, how is the area secured? Is that up to us to secure the area around it, or?
Mhm. That's what we would want to know.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, like, if they've never seen the site, how can they answer that question? I
Mhm.
guess?
So is the town like taking hands off, once the solar panels are in there, it's now the
Right.
company's taking care of that, the town doesn't?
Right.
So it's just a matter of leasing the land and having a contract with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Right.
what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So I would imagine, so they lease the land and they own the property, so it's their responsibility to protect their property. The liability, well, that would be an interesting question. The
Mhm.
liability
Yeah.
falls on the town in regards that they own the land, but,
It is, yeah, and, you know, I made my first visit there today, and, you know, if the committee is interested, we could arrange a site visit in the future.
Mm.
It is a neat place to see, and, you know, being up there, you can imagine solar panels, and, you know, it's got some really good flat land, some good opportunity, and it's basically a giant hill, so it's just
Mhm.
up there, there's nothing
Right.
blocking it.
Right.
Um,
No, it's definitely a good location. I just
But there
agree
were,
with that. but-
yeah, there were like dirt bike tracks up there and
I'm
stuff.
sure.
yes. Yep.
So that got me thinking, you know, there's kids up there,
I'm sure.
that are playing and riding the dirt bikes, and who knows what else, you know, could there be a situation where rocks are thrown into, you know, the area? Could solar panels become vandalized?
And I
Those are the
think,
types of,
And if someone up there gets hurt, who does that fall on? Is it them because they didn't secure it enough, or is it us because we own the land?
right,
I think we have some of these hidden here, so if we can, so I really like where we have, you know, the number of Massachusetts developed and operational
Mhm.
projects they have, but specifically, how many are municipally owned landfills? How
Mhm.
many are years operational? And really, so as we talk about, we want to ask them the breadth of their whole solar program, speak specifically to what experience do you have?
Mhm.
So I will say, so I think about that from the municipal aggregation effort. There was one company that came in that had what seemed to be a really great program, but they had zero experience in Massachusetts. I
Mhm.
believe that the first one we saw had
Yes.
none. And so when you look at it first blush, everything looks great, but for what we needed, we just felt that
Right.
we wanted to go with someone with more experience through the Massachusetts process. So,
Right.
so perhaps Eric, if when we reach out to them, we just specifically say, we really want to know what experience you have in this space, and because we'll be asking those exact type of questions.
right.
Because for those vendors that do have that experience, they'll be able to answer those questions.
Mhm.
How to keep the dirt bike kids out.
Yeah,
Right, right.
Or adults, I don't want to just assume that they're.
that's fair.
So is it, the only other piece on here, maybe perhaps, and this is, I think this is a great list. I think if they can come back with some of these, and we can also create a more conversational too. And I don't know if we need to get into the details of this, but just, you know, what, to the point of liability, but cost. Is
Mhm.
there, you know, we know the benefit, so we will receive benefit from the leasing of the space. Is that the only financial benefit to the town?
That and the payment in lieu of taxes.
Right.
Which, you know, it's another source of, it would be another revenue source essentially. Mm-hmm.
And so just to ask, is there, you know, what costs at any would potentially come back to the town?
Mm.
Or historically, have you ever had any projects like this where you see any cost or liability, for lack of another term? So someone does break through the fence on their dirt bike and hurt themselves
That's what I'm saying,
and
yeah.
damage a piece of equipment. So who handles whatever happens with that individual as well? And I'm assuming they pick up the cost of their equipment, but it's worth asking the question.
I'd be concerned about a lawsuit.
From either end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do we have any other, I'm trying to think of any other scenario where we'd be leasing municipal land for commercial or private use? Even something, I'm thinking of events on municipal property
Right, there is a 5K that's gonna be happening at
next Sunday.
the school, at the park, Lemansky Park.
There's one next Sunday too, I think. I know there is. But I'm not ready for it. Definitely not ready for it.
You've got a week.
So just thinking, I'm assuming that, I mean, it's very different because those are usually single event related, but
Right, there's the one at the high school,
Mhm.
and there's but I know they have
And
individual insurance.
you
Because I'm
have
on
an
the
event-
Broder
well, you-
board, and
yeah.
at North American Miners, we have to have our own insurance.
Mhm.
You have event insurance,
Mhm.
Right,
right?
So is it like something that the town's gonna need insurance in order to
In
cover
order-
what might happen,
right.
which is obviously an added cost to the whole
Mhm.
thing.
Right, and I do wonder,
And who pays for that? Is it the town, or do they cover it as
Well-
part of the agreement, since they're
Right.
leasing the land?
Mhm. yeah,
Like renter's insurance,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
yeah.
I know it's a silly way of putting it, but you know, like, that was the
No,
only
it's-
example I could think of.
No, that's a good example.
So I think we can probably anticipate, so let's get this list a little bit more locked down, but I think
Yep.
this is a great
No,
list,
these
a
are great.
couple additional
Yep.
questions on there. From a practicality standpoint, it would be great so what we did in the past is get this list out, see if they can just provide some feedback in
Yep.
advance. That might be, so I'm thinking from what would probably be the best is if we could have a select group, get this out, have them look at it in advance, create it to be part of like the record for the minutes for the 5/23 meeting, and let them come in and present on what they feel is relevant,
Mm.
rather than us going through and answering these questions, but then having their presentations as well as their responses available.
Mhm.
Also just trying to be mindful of time too. So if we have two or three come out to the
Mhm.
next meeting, and then we can decide at that point, is that enough? Do we need more?
Mhm.
Or do we feel comfortable we can make a decision at that point? So,
Mhm.
so do you have thoughts, Eric? Did you, on who we should have come out, or?
There are two companies that I definitely know have been developing on landfills in Mass,
Okay, great.
and I would want to invite those two for sure, and then find a third that I want to be sure that they've already done that,
Right.
done this type of work.
Public experience. So we'll find a third.
Mhm.
I know we want to stick with ones in Massachusetts, but maybe, there's any in Rhode Island or Connecticut that,
Right.
New Hampshire.
Yeah, that's close enough.
Right. I mean, I'd rather Massachusetts, but laws are different in every state. Maybe they have different views that we wouldn't think to ask because we're from here. You know what I mean?
Right.
And if we're just talking to companies from here,
Mhm.
they don't have the same experience as the company from the next state over,
Right. Yeah.
like Connecticut or New Hampshire has very strict, EPA laws up there. You know what I mean?
More strict than Mass. I'm not
A
really
little bit.
familiar.
Yeah, a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And perhaps, Eric, if it makes sense to see if we can frame it to see if they can come to present and do a no more than a 15-minute presentation.
Okay.
And leave maybe 5 minutes or so per developer for us to ask questions.
Right.
And just trying to think, for 3 of them to come out and to give due to the third person, rather than, have sitting through 15 minutes, provide us your questions in advance.
Right.
Or responses, 15 minutes, we'll have a few minutes Q&A. I think that'll probably be a good use. That'll be a pretty robust meeting for the
Yeah.
23rd, so.
Yep.
Absolutely.
That's a great idea.
And
These are good questions. There's questions on
Yep.
here I wouldn't think to ask.
yeah, I would, and the questions that have come up here too are super like
Mhm.
helpful. So it's good to have that rounded out. Would the group, as I get responses to these, would the group be amenable to me distributing them before the meeting for review?
That would be great. Yeah.
I'm imagining that it'd be good to sort of read through them, and then, you've got a sense of who they are a little bit before they come and present,
Mhm.
think that'll be great.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Okay.
So we'll look for the 23rd to try to have 3 developers come out with, we know at least the landfill experience. See if they could vet these questions, provide responses in advance, and we'll all review them and give them each 15 minutes to present. And then we as a committee can, at that point, discuss and say whether we feel we'll either go down this route with the developer, perhaps re-engage the consultant, or we might say back to the drawing board and pull in more, so.
Right. I have identified additional consultants as well. You know, PMSCO was one, and they had reached out to us, and that's actually what spurred this entire conversation in the first place. So, oh, we could do a development on our landfill. That's a good idea. But there are other consultants as well. So I do, I don't think that the committee is in any position where we would have to make it, an uncomfortable decision. We want to just, we're just doing our homework and,
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Eric, do you mind? I would like to go out there and actually see the
Yeah.
location.
Cool.
I think
That'd be great.
Yeah.
if we can, possibly all of us, if it's something that works with all of us, that'd be great in between now and the 23rd, so.
Yeah.
Do you know the address offhand, Eric? I'm just curious. I
looked-
don't even know where it is in town.
So it's off of Rochdale Street, and it's in the 300s.
Okay.
Okay. That narrows it down.
That's not very helpful. We had computer trouble again. I couldn't log into the computer. I wanted to show you guys some pictures that I'd taken today and
Nice.
pull up the map, but that didn't work out.
So it's past the bridge.
Yes, if you were coming under, how do you describe that? Under the bridge
Yeah.
from where Rotary Beach is, Rotary Beach is on your left and you're
Right.
going in that direction towards Leicester.
Yep.
Say, it's under the Tin Bridge and it's gonna be on the left, you'll see 2 access gates.
Okay.
They're right there. Yeah, it's a good amount of land too.
Okay, that'd be great. Excellent.
How many acres is it?
I believe total it's about 40 acres. It's 2 parcels of land.
Nice.
Yeah, and I measured the flat area up top, just back of the envelope.
Yeah.
And it was about 6.5 acres of land that looks like it's level and, and clear. So I don't know what the potential would be with the rest of that. The police also have a firing range up there,
Right, yeah, oh, yeah. I know where
Mhm.
that is, yeah.
but it's quite secluded and,
Mhm. They'll probably have to find somewhere else to go once the solar panels are up there. All right, that's fantastic. Next agenda item, just staff update. Any new information for us, Eric?
Yeah, I want to say three things. One, on the wind turbine feasibility, the business study phase, the consultant has been in contact and has confirmed a company that will do the acoustic study. So they'll essentially put a value to the noise, the ambience that exists now, and then project the ambience based on a certain model of a wind turbine. The company is called Atlantic Design, and they have been in negotiations. He said we'll probably get the green light on that within the next week or so. So I'm hoping to continue to get updates as that progresses. And the business study itself, we want to do this acoustic study, and then there would be like a financial, economic component as well. Originally, it had included a balloon study too, which we would float a balloon. But with the change in the economics in the project and whatnot, we felt that it would be good to wrap up the study with these two components first, and then get a sense if the town has the appetite to move forward. And if so, then we would do a balloon study. That would, you know, I think that would feel more appropriate if the town, you know, should decide that
So
this
it's-
is something we want to further pursue.
So it's the acoustic study,
Mm-hmm.
and you said the feasibility?
It's an economic study, so it's
Economic study,
mhm.
and revisit the town before moving forward on project. Okay. I just want to make sure I got it accurately.
Mhm.
So the information on the two studies would be presented to the town first?
Yeah, so it'll
Okay.
be put into a formal report, and I believe there'll be a presentation at our committee as well.
Excellent.
It's long overdue.
Yeah.
The town has entered into agreement to work with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. They are providing technical assistance to the town to develop a behavioral energy reduction plan. I believe I mentioned that. So they identified 6 facilities that are our top energy users, and in a conversation, we agreed that these would be, given the hours that they have, these would be great opportunities to focus on. They include the high school, the Swanson Road Intermediate School, DPW, so it's the highway and sewer, the this building actually,
Nice.
the school administration building, and the police station. And so that they're going to come out and do site visits on Tuesday, May 3rd. And I've coordinated with the facility directors at those locations. They will be involved in the site visits, and the staff at CMRPC is basically going to look for opportunities to save based on the technology used in the buildings and also how the buildings are being used. So,
Neat.
yeah.
So that's
That would
Tuesday.
be very cool.
Yeah,
Mhm.
very cool.
Any lead time on how, like a month, 6 months, do they give any perspective on?
For the final,
Yeah.
I don't have the lead time now.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just more curious.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll let us know once you have an
Mhm.
idea, so.
absolutely. I'm excited to present the findings as well. Perhaps we'd have CMRPC
Come here.
make a presentation here.
Great.
Mhm.
Great. That'd be neat.
So the final piece of information is that the town has begun receiving payments from the adder that was included in our municipal aggregation plan. So in that rate that was secured for residents is 9.5 cents per kilowatt hour. There was 1/1,000,000th of a penny per kilowatt hour is being collected, and that is used for the town to fund the energy manager position in the future. So that's helpful for me. This is a grant-funded position, and the grant funding will end this year, so that will secure my position for the next year. And also is going to fund energy efficiency projects in our buildings, and that will be, we haven't really worked out the mechanism for how that process will take place, but the payments just started, the town just started receiving those payments this last month in March. So it's exciting to see see that happening as well. I just wanted to let the committee know that,
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's fantastic. All right, so we have no public comments as there's no one here today. I think we don't have any informal discussion. We pretty much hit everything in there. We don't have any correspondence, right? Nope. On to minutes. So we have the minutes from the 28th, which were sent out to the committee. I brought copies in case anybody wants to see them.
Okay.
So I'm assuming everyone had an opportunity to look at them. If anyone would like to motion to approve the minutes.
I shall motion.
Would anyone like to second? Second?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. All in favor of approving the minutes from the meeting on the March 28th? All right, the minutes are approved. So our next regular meeting will be May 23rd at 5:30 here at the Auburn School Department at 5 West Street. It should be a pretty robust meeting. Looking forward to it. So barring any other items, would anyone like to entertain a motion to adjourn?
I'll adjourn.
Anyone seconds?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and the meeting will be adjourned at 6:44 PM.